in the name of personal injury law.
Good morning. I'm here today with Steve Sinas, a personal injury attorney at the Sinas Dramus Law Firm. So the Michigan enacted the No Fault Act in 1973, but this year there's been dramatic changes in that act. And Steve, I understand you were on the forefront of the battle regarding those recent changes as an attorney for the Coalition Protecting Auto No Fault. Can you tell us a little bit about what happened?
Yeah, I'm really happy to be here, and I hope we can cover what happened. There's a lot to talk about, okay? So I think the best place to start is my perspective as a personal injury attorney. Now, I know there can be some stigma out there about what we do as personal injury lawyers, but the reality is that a personal injury attorney should be looking after someone who's been seriously injured and trying to pursue all their rights and remedies and insurance coverage available for their injury. And the thing about the original no-fault law is that when I was able to meet with a family and one of their family members was seriously injured and tell them about the rights that were available under the no-fault law, there was this sigh of relief, because what they heard was that the law said that their loved one will have whatever is reasonably necessary for the care, recovery, or rehabilitation of the injuries. And that resulted in families who had a family member paralyzed, severely brain injured, having these benefits that were truly for life and that covered everything that was reasonably necessary. No more, no less. And so when I'm talking to people about these changes in the law, they have to understand what they had. And it's a hard thing for people to totally comprehend. But the reality is that these changes fundamentally change that right that I was just talking about for so many people.
So can you give us some examples of how the law changed?
So the changes in the law are so vast and cover so many different issues. I just want to try to focus on the ones that might matter the most to everyday people. First of all, the changes in the law say that as of next July 1st, 2020, people no longer have to buy that no-fault coverage that covers whatever is reasonably necessary. They can buy something less, or some people can opt out entirely. So some people wanted the choice, but the reality is that their choice is going to lead them with less than what they need if they're ever seriously injured. That's one major change. The other change is that for various groups of people, such as children and other types of people who are injured in motor vehicle crashes, they no longer have that right that they would have normally had under the law. They're going to be subject to whatever limited policy their parents buy. And so, one thing to think about in terms of this whole discussion of no-fault insurance is how it relates to the greater issue of health insurance in America. And that's what I think people really struggle to connect. And the reality is that we know health insurance in America is an overall broken system, or a system that doesn't operate the way it really should for those who are in the most serious need of health care, or for many of those people. And personal injury attorneys are supposed to help people with their rights to get that extra coverage. And so I am just lamenting the fact that, for instance, children who are playing in the street, whose parents buy the cheaper policy next July, and they're paralyzed, they're no longer going to get whatever is reasonably necessary for their care, recovery, or rehabilitation. They're just going to get whatever limited policy their parents bought. And it's those types of people that I think are the real losers under this law.
So, I think I heard one of the things that was the selling point for this new law was that it was to save money because auto insurance rates in Michigan were so much higher than elsewhere. But it sounds like there might be more of a societal cost that wasn't considered. Can you talk about that a little bit?
I can talk about both, the savings that people are going to see in their premiums and the societal cost. So there are legislators out there are people out there who are supporters of these reforms saying it's going to lower the cost of your insurance. It may lower the cost of your total insurance, possibly. But what the law says is that only lowers one portion of your insurance, your no-fault insurance. There are other portions of your coverage. And in fact, the other changes they made in the law are going to cost more, result in your other parts of your policy costing more. So there could be offsets in terms of whether people actually see a reduction in their premiums. Now, the societal effects, the Medicaid budget has already been projected to increase, going to be increasing significantly due to the fact that people aren't going to be fully covered. And I think we're going to see a bigger hit than they're even anticipating, because the cost of medical coverage for seriously injured auto accident victims is enormous. And we had a system, it was a private insurance system, the no-fault insurance system that covered it all, and now we don't have that anymore. And I think the taxpayers of Michigan are going to be the ones flipping the bill in the long run.
So I guess that leads me to two questions. I mean, what are the recourse for injured people now that their rights are limited, both for the people who have been injured previously that were benefiting from the protections of the prior No-Fault Act, and then I guess recourse for those people who are injured down the road under the new law.
So let me go back to the issue of what our rights were under the old law. We all had the right to have whatever is reasonably necessary for our injuries. We also had the right to not be sued for medical expenses that somebody we may accidentally injure has to incur. We didn't have the liability for that because they had their no-fault coverage. So now the remedy that these changes offer is that for those who are limited in their no-fault coverage going forward, they can try to pursue their uncovered medical expenses from the at-fault driver. They actually have that right. Now, that's better than not having the right, but here's the reality. At-fault drivers are going to have a limited amount of insurance, so it's not going to be a full coverage situation in most serious injury cases. And then the other thing is that liability insurance is going to cost more. So getting back to the reductions, because we all have this additional exposure for medical expenses, we're going to pay more for that portion of our insurance. And that's where I see it not making sense in terms of a solution that doesn't cause more problems than it solves. I think it does.
So what should Michigan residents think about when they're going to buy insurance now after July next year?
I think they have to think about what coverage they really have, and they have to listen to people who know about what you really need if you are seriously injured in an auto accident. And it usually exceeds your health insurance coverage, what you have through Medicaid, what you have through Medicare. So you really need to think about that, because I can't tell you the devastation families feel when suddenly they've been seriously or catastrophically injured in an auto accident.
Can you tell us a little bit about the process of how this law changed?
Well, that's the thing. The process was not the one that I would like to see in democracy. I was heavily involved with the process. I was hopeful legislators were listening to all sides to find a sensible solution. It seemed like for a few months maybe they were, but all of a sudden in May they pushed these bills through at 2 a.m. They're pushed through the governor's office. Everybody says yes. And I actually remember I was sitting on the Capitol floor an hour before they voted on the bill. And the bill had just, the version of the law that actually passed was just released within an hour before they voted on it. People were sitting on the Capitol floor. I was sitting there with my father trying to interpret 120 pages of a statute an hour before they vote on it. But yet they still voted on it, they passed it, and lawyers looking at it can see all the problems, all the drafting errors, all the ambiguities, all the head-scratching things they did, and it's just not how I want to see the process unfold.
Well, thank you for sharing the information, Steve, and I know you're going to be having more information available, resources for people that we're going to share through the program.
Yes, and our website too, which will get the information on the screen here.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
In the Name of Personal Injury Law is brought to you by the Sinas Law Firm.